Well, welcome to today's user group refresher session on the 12 tips for better data loading. This is Doug Cogswell. I'm here with Mateo Molino-Cadero. Mateo is going to be taking you through the material today. And as usual, this is interactive, so you can raise your hand using the GoToMeeting controls on the top right, and we'll unmute you and you can talk and ask questions back and forth. Or if you come in on the chat panel at the bottom, we'll pick up your question and we'll discuss it. And Mateo is one of our business consultants here, has done a bunch of work with quite a few clients. So here he is. Take it away.
Thanks, Doug. Hi, everyone. I'm Mateo, and I'm here to talk to you about the 12 tips for better data loading. We picked this topic due to the season, to the holiday season, and yeah, let's get started. So with data loading, it's really important to have some time to spend when you do the data loading, because then this can save a lot of time later. A lot of times one can seem tempted just to go through the wizard and upload the data quickly just to go up and start putting charts and doing all the fun stuff with Advisor, but we should really just spend some time to look over the fields, the tables we are loading, to make sure that everything would work properly after. So these are the 12 tips. The first one is load the core or the primary table first. Sometimes this is called also the master table. In the software, we call it the primary table. And it is important that we load this table first, because then the software will recognize the table as the primary. If we don't upload the primary table first, we can later change it, but this has to be done through all the pages, so that can take a little time. So it's better to program beforehand and make sure that we load the table, the master table first.
And I'm going to just jump in on that for a sec. So the primary table is what defines on the top toolbar the exclude unselected, the exclude selected. It determines which table that operates on first. So if there's a bunch of tables, the primary table determines what those controls work on. It also is what sets coloring. So if you load, say, the degrees table first, and that becomes the primary table, you probably want the entity to be the primary table. You would then have to change that using, there's a View Toolbar's data menu where you can switch it around, but it's easier if you just load the primary table as the first table. Then it will be that way default through the whole project.
Correct. And also, just to have an idea, mostly in all our clients, this primary table would be, depending on the project, but it can be the prospects, the entity table, or the constituent, however you call it. So yeah, remember to load that first. Then the next tip is regarding the data wizard. The data wizard is there to just help you through the process of loading data, and it's been programmed so that if there's something that you're not sure about, probably the default option is the best way to go. So yeah, that's the data wizard. Next, we have the different data types, and here is where it's important to spend the time, what I was talking before, because you want to make sure that the fields have the proper data type. These can later be changed either through managing the data sources, which I will show later in the software, or by using expressions to change the data type and create new fields. But same thing as loading the data, the master table first or the primary table first, you want to make sure that these are set properly from the start, because then you don't have to do any changes later. So now let's get to the different data types. The first one is dates. The date format comes with months, the month, the day, and the year, and it can also have time. So this is just especially important to choose in the beginning because then you can just use the parse function in the software just to extract whatever part of the data that you want, and this is really easy, and it makes it just really simple to manipulate all the data fields. Our next data type are strings, and strings are basically any field that has some non-numeric characters. So as I put it in an example here, Mateo, the nice thing with strings is that in the software we have also a bunch of expressions that you can use to concatenate or take out parts of the string. However, the downside to strings is they take some more memory space than other types, and this is going to relate to the next point, to integers, because, for example, for ID numbers, sometimes the software will detect them as strings, but we want to change them to integers because integers do not take as much space, and the software does a lot of indexing, and we do all the linking with the ID, so it's better to bring in these fields as integers. So just to add to integers, it's basically any number by default. These numbers do not have any decimal figures, and as I said, just remember when possible, bring the IDs as an integer. The next data type are double bytes, or sometimes we just call them doubles, and this is a data type that is also for numbers, but it allows you to store more digits than integers and can also store decimal numbers. So this will relate to all the options that will come next, and I will get to that in a minute.
One of the things on the double versus the integer, when you should use double bytes if you're summing things, I think the Windows storage holds numbers up to about 3.3 billion. And so if you have integers and they're totaling over 3.3 billion, you're going to get some weird results on sums because it overflows whatever the operating system storage is. So the bigger numbers, like giving, is important to bring in as a double byte because it'll range up and there's no issue with that. So integers, as Mateo said, are great for IDs because they index easily and they don't take much space. But if you start summing them and you're in the billions of dollars range, you'd want to make sure you're in double bytes. Is another reason about where you would use them.
Correct. And so now let's keep going. There's some options that we're allowed to select in the data wizard, and I will show this to you on the software next. But the first one is precision. This will be a selectable list with the number of decimal figures that you want to have the number with. So normally this would be either 0 or 2 in giving. It will depend on whether you want to have the amounts with cents or not. Normally most of our clients don't really care. Like, there's not much difference if someone gave $1 million versus $1 million with 32 cents. So normally you would choose these to be 0, and this also would save a little bit of memory. The next option is group digits. So we want to be careful with this because this relates to how the numbers are displayed. So when digits are grouped, it will show a comma to separate the numbers. So obviously with giving, we want these to be marked because hopefully we're all getting big donations, millions, that would be really hard to understand and read without the commas. So we want to mark that for giving, but for example with years, it would be really strange to see a year with a comma, or same thing with ID numbers. But later this can be changed also with the expression builder. Then the last option that we have is to show the number as a currency. So this will simply display the $sign at the beginning of the quantity. So obviously we want to use these in giving. Now our last two tips. The first one concerns the field names versus the display name. So it's important to know this difference because the field name is what comes from the source, from the Excel table or the text file or the database, versus the display name is what's going to appear in Advisor, and that's what we're going to be using in Advisor. And this relates to the last point, which is the data source with the table name, the data source name versus the table name. You want to have, sometimes you have really strange names on the table. Some of our clients have really long names, like you can get UNV, ADV, $, Prime Matter, or something like that. So this is the opportunity to have the table name changed to something that's really descriptive, and this will make easier to just go through the project when you have display names and table names that are very descriptive. And also I should add about the display names. These display names, for example, will appear in summary sheets, in data sheets. So this is what it's going to appear on our chart. So ideally, we want to think about that before, but if we don't, we can always create a new field with the desired name. But as I said, it's better to plan ahead. So then some other notes regarding the data changes. We want to make sure, and this is very important, because once a source is brought to Advisor, then that source, the name of that source shouldn't be changed, because that's going to throw up the software. And the same thing with field names. And it is important to say that later new fields can be added to the table on the right, and they can be brought into Advisor easily. And also new tables can be loaded at any time, but we just don't want to change or get rid of a table or a field and throw out the software later. So now that we've gone through the tips, I'm just going to do a quick demo with examples and show you how data loading works. So we have our Advisor, and we're going to start a new project. Taking some time, but here it is. So we have here the task view, and the first thing I suggest to do, well, it's to look at how to load data. So in here, we see there's a video that it's a short video that will tell us how to load data, and also there are some other tips that we can click, but then we can go to load new data. So this is the data wizard. You can expand it. And we have the different data source types. What I prepared for the demo is a text file, but I wanted to quickly show you what bringing data from a database would look like. It's basically the same as bringing it from a text file, but it will show you this option. So for example, here let's say we have an Oracle database, so we would pick that, and then it would ask us for our credentials. So we just put that in, and from then it's going to be basically the same as the text file.
Yeah, and Mateo, just point out here that with a database, you can load individual tables in an entire view. So one source might bring in 20 tables in a view either way. The same thing with a spreadsheet. Actually bring in the individual sheets, of the whole workbook can load 20 sheets at once.
All right, so we're going to pick the text file, and then we're going to be able to browse. We want to go to the webinar, and we're going to pick a basic entity table. We're going to click next, and it's gonna bring the fields. So here it is. In here, it's really nice to be able to expand so that we can read the whole field name. So in here we have two different views, one that lists all the fields, and then this other one that has a snapshot of the data. It's called the data preview. So in here we can just see, so we get an idea of what type of data we have in each of the fields. So we're going to go through the list, and here is where you have to spend some time. But as we can see, these fields in the beginning are all strings and have been detected by the software as strings. Then we have class year as an integer, and that is good. But we want to unmark the group digits. So that's going to bring our class year. We have our entity record type, home country. Those are all strings. Maybe in here, one thing that we should also do is make this field shorter, perhaps, so we can just change this to affiliation type, make it short, so that it will be able to be displayed on the charts later. So let's keep going, and we have the ID number. So yeah, it pick it as an integer. We want to ungroup the digits. Looks like we have some other strings. Let's check rating, because sometimes ratings can be numbers or something else. So let's make sure. And yeah, it looks like a string, so we should leave it as that. Region code, description, and then total lifetime giving. So that's being brought as a double. And then we want to estimate the precision to 0. We don't really care about cents. And we're going to group the digits and show it as a currency. And we've gone through all the fields, so it seems like we're good to go. Let's see if the software likes it. So in here we have an estimation of the rows. And now it's loading. So normally, if the software finds out a field that has the incorrect type, it's going to display a null instead of that, and I will show you just in a second. But let's first get to this screen. So we have this option to remember the data source definition. And this really depends on whether you plan to use the data source again in a different project, because if you save it, then you won't have to go through this process again. However, the difference is when you bring the data source again, it's going to show a number next to the data source name.
So to get at the data source, if you were starting and you'd save this, is in the task view right under where you click the load data source, there's another wizard load from previous data. So that would, if you save this source, it would be there the next time around, and it would just load this source exactly as Mateo just set the metadata for it.
Right. So we're going to leave it checked, and we're going to finish. And here we can see that on this blue bar down here, we can see, there it is, that we have all the fields and the rows loaded. If there was an issue with that, then this would appear red, and then if you click on it, it's going to give you the opportunity to get a log of all the errors, and then you can go back to the data and see what the problem was, whether you should change the data type, or maybe there's a problem with the data.
an example of what could happen is, so your IDs are mostly, they're strings in the database, but they're almost all numbers. So you think they're all numbers. You bring them in as an integer, but lo and behold, 10 of them have characters like A in them for some reason. We can't load that as an integer, so we'll load a null value in that row. There won't be any ID there, and we'll flag it down here and say, we found 10 strings in your integer field, and here they are. We stuck them in as nulls. And then you'd have a decision whether to clean the data up, because it's probably a data error in the database, or you want to reload it in us as a string, and you'd have those would load that fine. That would be an example of where you would get data loading errors and how we handle it.
Right. And now, just to wrap up, I wanted to show you. They show the project workshop, but you can access the project workshop from the task view here in Open Project Workshop. And here it's going to show you, if you click on data sources, it's going to show you your source, and later here you can come to modify, to add new tables, add new fields, or make changes to the ones you did previously. Also, it's important to know that once you do the changes, you're going to need to save this as an ADB and then load the data again.
Yeah, so Mateo, click on the metadata tab here. So this is like the definition of what Mateo just loaded. So going through this wizard, you can then change it. And so you can change any of the fields. Also, if this is where he pointed out earlier, if there were new columns added on the right of the database there, so those are fields that weren't here when we loaded this, now they're there, they'd show up on the bottom of this list unchecked, and then you could, we didn't load any new tables, but fields, if there were, they'd be there. You can then check them off, then you hit refresh on the bottom, which is going to refresh the thing, and then you hit save. It's going to save the revisions into the project, and then as next time you load the data, save it as an ADB, reload the project, it's going to pick up the field changes as identified here and also the new fields. The caveat, if you start changing things here and then you've got expressions, like if you change names at this point there's no problem, but if you had set expressions on the names as they were first loaded or put charts up on them, the project will load, but those expressions can't compute because the thing it computed on in the first place has been changed, or the chart that was set on it has changed. So it'll load, but you'll have some blank charts perhaps, or some expressions that didn't work, and it'll flag those things, but you'll have to go back and change them because we have no way of knowing that, like gender was changed to some other word in your reload. So just later on in a project, changing at this level, you just have to think through where the fields are being used. And the project workshop, if you go back through it, it actually will show you where each calculation is used and where each field is used. So you can use this by just, right now nothing's being used, but if it was being used, it has a usage on the fields and the calculations, which can show you if I change this, I've got to be aware it's got these derivative downstream impacts. Sorry, I rambled on a little bit there, but
no, yeah. So that's why it's important to load things properly from the beginning. But yeah, later you can manipulate here with expression builder. So if you're interested in seeing that and in doing links, check out some of the other webinars in our user group. But that's really all I had for you today. So we can start getting the questions if there's some.
Yeah, there's one back, which is what sets the currency. So I can add you back when you said you can check the currency is coming from the Windows, the operating system. So if it's a U.S. operating system, it's a dollar. If it's a a French system, it's going to put a euro in. So we're reading off the operating system for that question. Now I'll actually make a sort of implied question here is if I lost actually my train of thought. Wait a minute. He asked me a question. I was going to say that if the table structure changes, this is addition of columns or whatnot, or if a new table comes in, you can go through the same process and just use the link and join wizard to connect them in the same way, or use the workshop here to modify the data source and get the new fields in. I think it's one of the things we do pretty well. There's a question. So the question, you mentioned changing format in the expression builder if you missed it on the data load. How do you do that? So I would rephrase. So suppose you brought something in as a. We'll just try this. So one of the fields we brought the ID in as an integer, and we actually wanted it with a string with some of the padded zeros on the beginning or something. So how would you do that? So you went up to the expression builder wizard.
Right.
It's right in the workshop, right there, to open this.
So then, for example, we would like to name the new, here in calculated field, we're going to pick the new name. So in this case, it will be ID string. And in here, in the expression builder, we have all the fields, and also it lets us choose operators, functions, constants. So in here, we're going to want to use the functions. So we want to convert to a string, and we're going to pick the ID number, and in here,
Just leave that out for now. Let's just get the ID number first converted, and then we can do a follow-on question.
So now that's going to show the ID number as a string. It shows here that it was able to do the calculation, and that's how we would change it to a string.
So now you've got a calculation in there somewhere, so you can open up on the left the calculations, and they'll show you the calculation. And then if you wanted to modify it, suppose we wanted to, the usage tab will show you where it is. If you want to modify, you could go in here and suppose you could pad zeros onto it, or suppose we want to just stick an A in front, just for purposes of example. You want to make each string each ID is supposed to have an A, then the number.
So you will use just the plus that works as a concatenating operator, and then we add A at the end.
Yeah, then it'll show you the new field, and then you click OK, and that's in there. How about the formatting? So you talked about if you missed the formatting up front. Suppose you have an integer that came in not as a currency, a double byte, and you want to make it an integer and a currency. So you want to convert maybe the TLGs to an integer. So you got, for whatever the reason, we loaded it one way. We want it that way, but we also want it the other way, for example, which can happen.
Right. So we go to the expression builder again, and then we want to say TLG integer, for example.
And this might be because you've already built a project and you have a bunch of charts up on the TLG as a double byte, and you don't want to change them, but you want to see if this makes a difference for some reason. Is often what can happen. Then you might want to then switch the whole thing around, but at least you're just experimenting here, taking a look at it. So it's just easy enough to do this.
So in here you would pick, for example, integer. Total lifetime giving.
Yeah, I think that's what it is. And then, so then there's some formatting fields. Like if you, so that put it in. Now, if you wanted to make sure it was a currency, for example, the help talks about these things. But if you miss the currency up front, there's formatting functions about currency and digits. So suppose this wasn't a currency and you wanted to be a currency, right under format, it gives you these different capabilities. So you can format things. You can change the, if it's a double, you can change the precision, and you can make currencies or things that are currencies. If they're not supposed to be, you can get them turned around here by using these formats. So this thing, you just stick on the end of it an as sort of an as C or something, means it's going to come in as a currency. And then in the charts, it's going to put a dollar, well, actually already was a currency, but if it wasn't, it would put a dollar sign in front of it.
So now, yeah, here we can see.
Yeah, with the new calculations are showing up. Right. So, yeah, there were a couple of questions about that because I think you'd mentioned if you miss it loading the data, how you catch it after you've built out a project and you don't want to change the source definitions. Any other, let's see, questions? We're looking at the chat and check out the questions. Okay. So if you got any questions, we're open. Put your hand up or type them in on either the chat or the question below. So we're taking a last look here. Maybe we're so completely clear. Everybody's got it. Anything else that you think? Let's think if we missed anything while we're waiting for last questions to come in. There actually is one right here. I'm trying to see it. When loading the data, it didn't seem to change the currency so that we could see it. Yeah, in the expression builder, and it'll show in the charts. Like if you bring up, so the question was, where do we see the currency? The easiest way, to go to a page and put up a, actually this will show you where those fields will show up. Bring up a data sheet and just, I would say let's look at the ID number, the TLG, and then the calculated TLG, and we should be able to see the differences. Right. So these are the text sheets, so you can sort of see the ID number came in with no comma. The TLG with the other one we formatted already came in that way, but we've put the commas in the dollar sign. So it's, yeah, the data is still stored as it was read in, but the pool knows to put this on for all the displays in the project, whether it's a summary sheet or a bar chart or a data sheet. It'll now it'll format the numbers like this. A bar chart would also show the dollars as would a summary sheet or any of the other charts. So that's where that shows up. Other questions? Looking. Probably some more will come in, but looking. I think the thing, and we'll get this webinar is recorded. We'll get it posted up on the user group page, and we'll post it out. And it sort of goes along with the one that Margot did last month on the linking and joining tables. The sort of two go together because the next step to this is the data's in. How do you link and join it? So I think the two of them complement well. Just wondering if there's anything else we missed here. And I think you nailed it. And I think the ending with the project workshop is that's the place to go where all this stuff is, where you can see what came in, you can modify it. It's got these usage pages that will tell you what's linked to it. So if you change it, you tell you what will be impacted, and it's the place to see everything and then manage it. I know, Mateo, as you're building projects, this is sort of invaluable. I'd say one last thing comes up is we want to export this stuff, like all this data. Show us, like, there's a place where you can actually get all of this out of here. There's actually a couple. There's at the top controls on the right there. You can export the schema for all of this to text files and out of Advisor, which we'll often put in our project delivery docs. One of these top.
You can also access.
Yeah, but I want to export the schema, which is keep going up. The controls on the top. I think it's the little question mark. Keep going down a little bit, over to the right a little bit, left two. That one. Not that one. What's one of these? Go to the right. That one. Yeah, so that thing, if you push it, it'll put a text file somewhere with all of the calculations, all of the links, all of the table fields. So it's all of the detail that you've just loaded and worked with. You can get it out of here, which if you want to have a project document, it's great because it's everything. It's this whole project workshop exported. There's also, as you're building these, I'm rambling a little bit, but there's a page to the left of it. You cancel out of this, and then go up to the one that said Data Pool Visualizer. It was just to the right or the left. Which one was it? That one? Yeah, if you click that, it's going to open actually a page which shows what's in the project from a memory standpoint. So this is also useful after you've loaded data. There's not much in this project, but it's showing you on the right what's taking up the memory pool, and then it's got some stats. And sort of this heat map visual is showing that the table, the big red thing, is a chunk. We actually store the strings outside of the table, so if you load 6 tables and they have names, we don't store the names 6 times. We store the names once, so this is probably names or something's in that strings file. We recognize that they're the same. And then there's some other, on the right, some metadata and some other stuff. There's one chart up that's taking some memory. So this is showing what's using up the memory, and you can sort of see the total is like 60 megs for this project at this point. And when he's clicking on it, it's updating the stats on it. So this is a great way. If you come in here, and strings are like 3 gigabytes, so there's probably some long comments in there that you could see down below what it is, and you probably may not need that. Or if one table is immense, you might want to think about how to cut. Or sometimes we'll find somebody puts a bar chart on 6 million things, and it's actually trying to stack the colors into 6 million things. It's not a good use of the bar chart, and you'll see one chart will dominate. So we got this from the project workshop. It's one of those icons over the right, which the first one we hit let you export the whole schema. The tool visualizer shows you what's using up memory, and it's to see the whole thing, you need to have opened all the pages in the project. But this is a great tool for tuning a project at the end, and so helps you understand the loading as well. Covered another topic there. We're into overtime here. I'm looking for last questions. Okay. Well, thank you all for participating. We'll have this posted up on the user group site in a few days, and we'll push this out. And we have there's user group sessions set for January, February, March. I know the next one's on the expected value. I actually forget what's in February, March, but you get the announcement of that when we send this out in the next few days. So thanks, Mateo.
Thanks to everyone. Thanks for listening, and happy holidays.
Yeah, take care.